Hey everyone, and welcome to TV Woman, where the points don't matter and neither do these guys. Today we're talking about strong female characters like myself, so I'll be hosting this episode instead.
Do we get to say anything?
No.
Hey everyone, welcome back to TV Guys, the show that is going to spend all episode mansplaining. Now, if you don't know what that is, it's when a man explains things to all of you females out there who might not understand, and he does it in a condescending tone. See, condescending is a word. It's a big word that you might not have in your vocabulary. I don't blame you for not knowing, but it means talking down to. And so, oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. Hey, I'm Matt.
I'm Brian. And just a word is when there's a bunch of letters in a row and it means something.
I saw you like really eager to jump in. I'm like, let's get let's get Brian here on this time where we can get all these letters of hate written to us.
Yes.
So hopefully we made you mad today because that's what we're going for. But no, Angie will not be actually hosting this episode. We just brought her in for cold open here. Thought it was a lot of fun. She did great. Only did that in one take. You know,
However, Angie will be joining us next week as a tease.
She will be next week. Man, we have got a loaded episode next week. We are loaded with Angie, her sister, and my sister-in-law, Trisha, and then our favorite Star Wars expert, Jeff, and then, of course, Brian and I, and we're going to be talking about The Office again. If you missed last week's episode, we talked about The Office seasons 1 through 3. Next one, we're going to be talking about Office season 4 and 5, so don't miss that. But we're not talking about that tonight.
Normally we do the plugs at the end, but I kind of jumped in there.
You did, and that was a great segue to talk about that. But yeah, so there we go. Tonight we are talking about. You guys might be listening to this in the morning. I don't know. You're like, tonight, dude. It's like 7:30. We are talking about strong female characters. Now there are a lot of amazing strong female characters in TV shows. I don't know about you, Brian, because like, when you say strong female characters, there are a bunch of different ways you can take that. Because
Yes.
like there are some ways that people are like, these are strong characters. That it's essentially they write like a man's part, like an action hero, Steven Seagal. I don't know why he's my de facto example, but some big like strong character, and they're like, but then we're gonna call it a woman. And to me, I don't feel like that's as strong, even though it is strong in a way. I'm looking at a very holistic sort of way. So that's kind of a little bit of my qualifications when I'm talking about strong female characters.
Yeah. And this is also a little bit of a series. So actually, it's just like going back probably like 8-10 years. I had this idea, like I broke down, there's like 40 different types of TV characters. And we talked about one about a month ago with Brandon. We talked about the lovable TV oafs. And so I thought I'd go to that well and pick out another one. And so strong, independent women. What I'm thinking about is characters who kind of embody that, like that women empowerment. Like these women are taking control of their own careers, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not in relationships, because actually all of them on my list end up in relationships.
Yeah,
But
I think mine too.
but it's not. None of them are like, I have to have a man to have worth in this life, which is like a lot of times the female characters are underwritten, especially if you look at like 90s TV shows. They have the kids and they have the dads are sometimes really interesting, and a lot of times the moms are just really not that important to the show, which is a shame. And so kind of wanting to highlight what are shows that do female characters really well.
Yeah, and then there's like late 90s into 2000s. They kind of had the matchup of the two types that we talked about: a lovable oaf and a strong woman. And they they tended to put those two together. Like King of Queens is a great example of that. You know, you have those two together as a couple. I mean, Rose Raymond is another one too. And so, you know, there's plenty of opportunity for that. And that's a very natural dynamic. But it kind of became cliche because of how often sitcoms did it.
Yeah. In the 90s, it basically was given the thing of like, all dads are dumb. All they want to do is ignore their kids and play golf.
Yeah. I love, if you listen to Brian Regan, he's a great comedian. I highly recommend him. He's really
he's
funny.
One of my favorites, yeah.
But he talks about like how there's infomercials where they it's like the men are just completely inept. So they have the wife there in the foreground and she's just like talking about something. She's like, my husband is so stupid. And then like he's like, and then the husband's back, like caught in the Venetian blinds, like struggling to get out. Oh, what was it? You know, that's how those infomercials used to be. Men couldn't do anything, and the woman's like, well, because they can't do anything, I got this product.
We should do an episode about stand-up comedians. I feel like it's close enough to TV shows. That's not a conversation for right now, but I'm just thinking we should do that.
It's not a conversation for right now, but let's have it anyway. Let's just see. All right.
Live planning, you all get to hear.
Live planning. There it is. Although it's not really live, but you know what I mean. Anyway, you know what, Brian? I'm going to have you start because I have a feeling you have my number one. So instead of us both like saying the number one, I've got some others that I can just talk about too. I've got 5 women I want to talk about pretty much, but 3 of the top 3.
I have 4.
Sounds good.
I'll start with one that I don't think you may have thought of, which is Roseanne from Roseanne.
Okay. I did not think of her. You were correct.
No. And, people just tangentially think of Roseanne as, oh, she's just some loud, abrasive character. And yeah, I mean, she plays up her, her voice for laughs, and she's not as like prim and proper as like other women on TV. But if you watch the show, she actually is very competent. She actually does care about her family and her husband and her sister and everything. And she's not like going around screaming at everybody like super harsh. Like she'll be harsh to her kids when they deserve it. But she actually is
sarcastic.
And sarcastic.
But it's a comedy, so you forgive it.
Yeah. But she actually is a very, like loving, caring person who just won't take crap from anybody. She knows what she's worth. And like, I think that show is so underrated. Like growing up, my parents didn't really want me to watch it. But now looking back, I still haven't seen the whole series. I've maybe seen about half of it. But I think it's a very underrated show. It shows like some more realism than other 90s shows do. And it really shows how families can stick together through hard times.
Yeah, it's definitely a product of Gen X generation. Of the Gen X generation saw women for the first time really be big parts of the workforce. And so in the 80s, it was more and more common for women to be in those working roles. And there are especially a lot of families that were lower middle class or higher lower class that both parents had to work. And so this is one of those families. They're not specifically poor, but at the same time, they're not like crazy rich. That it's that struggle that a lot of people know or are familiar with. And so to have both parents be working, but for her to also be dreaming of these things, like her arc of wanting to be a writer and like dreaming of a better life, not only for her, but for her family as well. You're absolutely right. It was a very good representation of a side that we don't always see in sitcoms.
Yeah. And even continuing, I mean, after they killed her character off on her own show, and now they have The Conners, which is not as good, but kind of to show like the intensity of it, there was an episode of The Conners where they're having money issues, and her husband, Dan, John Goodman, is saying, like, he's arguing with his kid, his daughter and his granddaughter. And he basically just gets fed up, and he says, your mother told me to get life insurance 30 years ago. And if I did that, I could just throw myself off the roof and you guys would be fine. And it's kind of like this harsh reality where the whole room went silent. Because he basically said, if I had the ability, I would kill myself so that you guys could have money. Yeah. Which is like, kind of shows where they're at.
Yeah. The plot of To Kill a Salesman, or The Death of a Salesman, not To Kill us. Combine Death of the Salesman and To Kill a Mockingbird. Yeah. Create a new piece of literature.
And I haven't caught up in a while, but I still watch The Conners, but it's definitely not the same as without Roseanne. And it's also kind of just become a mouthpiece for liberal agenda a little bit, which is kind of annoying. But
it's annoying to have that of TV shows. I know one of the actors from the show Abbott Elementary, she went on, she's like, people are tired of hearing their Twitter feed regurgitated to them in entertainment. And that actually made me want to watch Abbott Elementary. So I actually watched the pilot not too long ago. And I'm like, yeah, I actually think I might enjoy this show. So,
yeah.
And that just won an Emmy this last week. One of the supporting actors or actresses, she won.
Nice. And then one last thing I had is I saw a news article that said that Michael Fishman, who plays the son, DJ on The Conners and Roseanne, is leaving the show. And it's like, that's not really news. He was in like 5 episodes of the series. He barely was there to begin with.
I'm leaving. Oh, are you still here? Well, fine then.
They literally wrote a storyline as to why he would not be around, but his daughter would be around. And they just like...
That's fair.
Yeah. All right, Matt, hit me with one of yours.
Well, let me hit you with another ABC show, and
Okay.
this was a show that was to me was really good. It struggled in its first season, and this is to me like one of the quintessential get past the first season episode TV shows, and then you've got a great show, and that was Agents of Shield. And there's a character in it named Melinda May. Now she is that type of character that I explained at the very beginning. That she is very action oriented. She's the heavy of this show.
Mhm.
Like they call her, oh my gosh, it's been a little bit since I've seen it. She has a nickname, but it's something like the Tank or the Buzz or something. The Cavalry. There you go, the Cavalry. That it's like when she is gonna be in a fist fight, she is one that's gonna kick your butt. Like the females of that show are stronger in action sequences than the men are, I think. Especially the physicality of it, because you've got Mockingbird and you've got her, and then you've got Quake, and so two people with powers, or two superheroes, and Melinda May. But she is this no nonsense character that she starts off like kind of begrudgingly being on this team, but also keeping everyone at arm's length in terms of relationship. That it wasn't her idea to be on this, but she will be supportive. She will help make sure the missions get accomplished. And she really becomes a member of the team, and she develops these relationships as time goes on while still keeping this stoic character. And you see a lot of her past too come up. You see some old relationships and like where some of the cynicism comes from that she gets in the second season. You see flashbacks of that. And she becomes just such a endearing character, even though she still is like this grumpy pants McGee and I will break your fingers if you touch me the wrong way. You know, it's that sort of woman. Don't take guff from anyone. I love her character, and it's the actress who voiced Mulan.
Okay.
She has become kind of like this, really relaunched her career, and you've seen her pop up. Like she's in The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett. She's
what's her name?
Yeah, I can't remember what her name is, but she's like Boba Fett's right-hand woman.
I'm sorry, Jeff, I don't know her name.
Yeah, I know exactly. We failed. But, you know, she's like, if you name a Disney property, she got that one like Disney award. Like Disney gives out these awards for like people that they really love. Like Robert Downey Jr. got it in the same year as Ming-Na Wu. I think that's what her name is, Ming-Na Wu, that she got the award as well. And it's just like a Disney Lifetime Achievement Award sort of thing, which actually might be more scary than like nice, because now Disney's like, we own you. You'll never escape. I don't know.
Fennec. Her name's Fennec.
Finnick. There you go.
Yes.
But in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Melinda May, fantastic character. That's a show that has a lot of really good characters, and so she is one of those standouts that's just so good.
I don't have a whole lot to say because I haven't seen that show, but that actress I can see, because sometimes you see just the actress itself and the stuff she's been doing, like, you know, even as a voice as Mulan or as Finnick, she kind of just exudes that powerful female energy.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you see it in all of her roles. She tends to bring this like, I don't want to mess with this woman sort of energy to anything that she does.
Mm-hmm. All right. My next one is probably the least likable of mine, but you can't deny that she is an independent, strong woman, which is Lorelai from Gilmore Girls.
Yeah, I don't like her that much.
Yeah, but you have to admit she did, you know, break away from her parents, and she did manage to make a life and make a home for her and her daughter, and, you know, get herself embedded in this town. And, you know, she did thrive and survive, and she ended up, you know, working her way up to manager of the inn, and then buying her own inn. And, you know, and a lot of stuff in her personal life and her issues with her parents is where I have issues with it as it comes down. But as far as her breaking off on her own and saying, like, I'm going to do it on my own, I mean, I feel like you got to admire the character for that part of it. Unless you don't.
There is strength there. See, I'm going to push back on this because that's risky to do that in your life. And like some of the stuff that she had to go through, like she had to be very resolute. And there's a difference to me in being resolute, actually more stubborn than resolute. There's a difference to me to being stubborn versus strong. She, to me, is not emotionally strong. And I view that as a big part of some of the strength of independent women, is that independent women, like they need to have that balance in their life, because if you if you have like one side of the pendulum here is like women that can't exist without a man and like their whole identity is in a man, then the other side of the pendulum is someone like Lorelai was like, I won't be defined by anyone and I'm going to make my own way and I'm going to make my own path and like no one's going to tell me what to do. Like there is prudence in listening to the people around you, and like it's not just strictly for women, like men too. There is wisdom in taking not taking effect, because there are so many times that she just decided to be offended at something someone did, and it's like because of that she acted out in a stupid way and it made things harder for herself than they needed to be. And that's what I see when I look at Lorelai. It's like, sure, you need to be strong to live a life like that, but you've brought so many problems on yourself because of a simple refusal to mature and accept forgiveness or accept whatever. So that's where I push back on that.
I get that point, and this is where I see it. And looking back on Lorelai's story, when I'm thinking about this, is at the time, like in the flashbacks when she had just had Rory and she's trying to escape like the conveyor belt life that her parents have around her. You're going to be this rich wife, and that's you're going to be an Emily Clone. Like I get that she didn't want to have that life, and I think at that time she needed to do something drastic because at that point her parents weren't going to be like, oh yeah, you can go off and live in Stars Hollow. Like she had to do something drastic at that point. But I think in the years between then and when the show started, where she had already been established and had her life together, then I think at that point she didn't need to keep her parents at bay, because at that point like, her parents can't control her. Why not try to reach out and say, hey, like I know we had our issues, but let's try to repair the relationship. Instead, she tried to continually villainize her parents, which is where the unlikability comes in.
Absolutely. Yeah. You can't be the slave to parent expectations. At some point you have to grow up, and if they don't let you, you're right. Sometimes you do have to pull yourself out of that, even in a way that might be detrimental. But then coming back to it, like that was a really good way to put that. So 100%.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm with you. All right. My number 2 is a great character, one that I absolutely love. She is an independent woman, but at the same time, we only have seen her in the show that I'm talking about in a relationship. And yet she still is, I don't think anyone's going to argue the strong independent side of it. And that's Kim Wexler from Better Call Saul.
Oh, yeah.
She is such a dynamic character.
Is she officially dating Saul throughout the whole time?
I mean, they're together even right away in the beginning.
Weren't there some scenes, I haven't seen the early ones in a while, but wasn't there times where he's like trying to say, well, what about us? And she's like, there is no us. And then later on they get together, or am I remembering that wrong?
I think it's one of those like early on, like a Romeo and Juliet sort of thing where it's like, we shouldn't be together. This probably isn't the best for us to be together. Like I said, or like you said, I don't remember 100%. I just remember that they still did have that relationship early on, whether they wanted to admit to it or not.
Go ahead and continue. But also just try not to spoil season 6 for me.
Oh, I'm gonna. So in season 6, when everyone dies, including Kim and Jimmy, who somehow is in Better Call Saul, but he's still dead. No. So Kim, up until season 6. So Kim is one of those characters that she is very successful and works really hard. She's very smart. She is an equal to Jimmy in every way, but also at the same time is a compliment in a lot of different ways. The negative part of her does come from the fact that their relationship, you see it as it continues to develop, that like they kind of enable the worst parts of each other. And it's a very interesting dynamic where it's like they get to a point that it's like, okay, this is when they're going to break up. This is the end of the Jimmy and Kim, and then this is going to set things up for Better Call Saul. And then they dig deeper into it, and they're like, all right, well, I guess we have to get married now, or stuff like that. That it's like, well, I thought that you guys were going to break up, and like they keep coming back to each other. And so sure, there is a little bit of, I wouldn't call their relationship toxic, but it definitely is not beneficial for them. But it is still amazing to watch Kim be able to hold her own in a courtroom, to watch her hold her own in conversations with Jimmy and like to have her own opinions and have her own thoughts and beliefs and motivations. Like this is how, to me, female characters should be written, is to say like, yeah, there's a lot of facets to these characters, and sometimes they make great decisions and sometimes they don't make great decisions, but it's not because they're like a woman that they're not making a good decision, or whatever the case may be. I hope and I think, because like I watch a lot of TV now, there's a lot fewer of those mistakes that you see of women just being shoved into these cliche roles, and you have more dynamic women. And I love that we now have a character like Kim Wexler who is just as complex as any of the men in that series and just as intriguing. And there are times when the Jimmy Kim storyline is so much more interesting than anything else that's going on in the show.
Yeah, it's interesting when you say that they bring out the worst of each other, because if you take Jimmy out of the equation, like Kim is set up to have a great, successful life. She's a great lawyer. She can grind and work with her, whether it's for HHM or Schwagert and Coakley, or with the what's the bank that she works for with Rex Lynn.
Mesa Verde.
Like she has like big moves in her career that she's doing, and she could be like completely self-sufficient. I mean, she is self-sufficient, and go through, have a successful life without dipping into the crime world or anything below board at all. And she could have completely legal success, but she keeps going back to Jimmy, and like that enticement of like, let's pull this prank and con this rich guy out of drinks at a bar and all this stuff. It just keeps coming back. It's just like she and Jimmy are drawn to each other, but I don't think it's because of anything like that. I think it's just, I don't know how to say it. It's just how they are.
Yeah. It's such a good relationship, and what happens in season 6 is a good conclusion to everything, not just for them but for the whole show, and watching what they do in season 6 is really interesting too. I loved how it ended. I thought Better Call Saul was great, so make sure you watch that season if you haven't already.
I will, as soon as I figure out how to.
Once I can, Matt. Once I can.
Because they want me to buy cable to watch it, and I'm not going to do that. So I have to wait till it comes on Netflix, or I find some other way to do it.
AMC Plus, no thank you. Gosh, AMC Plus, the biggest crock of a subscription service ever. Like, we've got good content. No, you don't, guys. Come on.
So you've got Breaking Bad, which is also on Netflix.
And you've got Better Call Saul, which is also on Netflix, except for one season.
Yeah.
Sure, in Canada, they have this deal with Netflix where in Canada, they would put each show on Netflix the day after it aired. But they can't do that here in America? Baloney.
You remember when that's what Hulu was? We went back, like, I remember the last couple of seasons of The Office. That's how I watched it the day after on Hulu.
That's how I watched a lot of shows like Heroes and House, like in college.
Yeah.
Plenty of shows in college on that.
Back before Hulu became its own thing.
Yep. Freaking Hulu. All right. Number 1.
My number 1 is the one that's likely same with yours. Is it Leslie from Parks and Rec?
It is Leslie. It's really hard not to have her as number 1.
No, because that's what the whole show is about. Like she is the lead. She's the one who has all the female role models in her office. And, even Ron, he's like the man's man, and they could have easily made him like, oh, I don't like women. No, he loves women. He just does his own thing, and he like lets Leslie run the show. And everybody respects Leslie. There's not a single, well, I mean, if you don't count the side characters like Stuart Joe or Jeremy Jam, but like the main characters all really support Leslie.
Even April, who doesn't respect anything.
No. And she won't admit it a lot, but she loves Leslie. And when she does admit it, just like mumble it, like, oh, I love you.
Or has to have like this long written thing out, like, I got to read it off this card.
Yeah.
And Leslie is a character that's like, this is how dynamic her character is and how dynamic the writing is that like they base her character off of like politicians that I don't like at all, and yet I can't help but to love her character. And Leslie is just fantastic. She is that one that brings out the best in everyone. Like, this is another side of strength, because like sure, she's boundlessly optimistic, which is 100% a strength, especially in a world that doesn't want women to succeed. And she's balancedly optimistic, but then she also is so good at fighting for people around her too, and like fighting for their relationships and fighting to help them be the best versions of themselves and to really appreciate things about themselves, like how she gave that birthday present to Ron that was like so distinctly Ron. She's like, I care about you, I want you to enjoy your birthday, and this is the way that you enjoy it, is by being alone, so that's what I'm going to do for you. She's really good at recognizing strengths and qualities in people and bringing those out so that they recognize it for themselves.
You see that also, especially when everybody's banding together to say like, oh, okay, you don't have a campaign manager, well, I'm going to do this for you, I'm going to do this for you, and Jerry's like, well, you didn't tell me what we're doing. But even in that scene, they all at the drop of the hat, like, yeah, we don't have any experience, but we believe in Leslie, so we're going to figure this out together.
Yeah, she's very easy to believe in, and man, Amy Poehler is so well suited for that role too.
Yeah, with Parks and Rec, I know at the point early on it was discussed of it being possibly a spinoff of The Office, and it's got a lot of that same chemistry in there. She's got a little bit of similarities with Michael Scott in that she can be overly energetic and she wants everyone to be a team, but she doesn't have the annoyance and like incompetence in her job that Michael has. He takes that takes that energy and turns it into she's so competent and that people will put up with it because they respect her so much, which is like the part that Michael didn't have.
Yeah, she started the show that way in season 1. They used the Michael template for her, and so there was a bit of incompetence of her like biting off more than she could chew. And then they realized we need to play to Poehler's strength, and that biting off more than she can chew, we can keep that. But let's not have it ever like be because she's bad at her job. Let's just make it that she is so eager and ambitious that she runs ahead of where she might like have the resources to support her. And that's a great way to create conflict while also having a character that you really root for.
Yeah. For sure. And it makes it such a dynamic show. Like I still go back and forth as to, do I like The Office better or do I like Parks and Rec better? I know some people would be sacrilegious to say anything other than The Office, but those two are 1 and 2. I think it'd be hard pressed for me to think of anything else that would beat those two.
Yeah, it's nuts to me that we've talked about Leslie so much, but something that I realized even this week as I was thinking about shows and conflict, I love in Parks and Rec, because they've done this conflict a lot. I don't like man versus man conflict. I don't like the Jeremy Jam storyline quite as much. I like Paul Rudd because Paul Rudd is great, but if you kind of view the whole election as the conflict, then that's better than just like her against Paul Rudd instead of like him being a straight out villain. He's just he's kind of Paul Rudd. He's a dope, and it's fun to watch that.
It was her versus Kathryn Hahn.
Yeah, that was a little bit
more.
Yeah. And even then you like Kathryn Hahn because like it was never personal. She's just like, I'm just really good at what I do. I can't help it. And so I liked the conflicts of Parks and Rec except for like the Jam stuff, because I like the man versus, I'm forgetting the types of conflicts, but not man versus man, but man versus like whatever the circumstances are. And like her having to create the Harvest Festival and all of the things that could go wrong with that. She's not really competing against a person per se. She's competing against, she doesn't have any tools to put this on, but she's going to move heaven and earth. And so I loved all those conflicts when they would have stuff like that.
With the Harvest Festival, it's not her against Ben and Chris who had just come, because Ben and Chris weren't the villains. They were just being pragmatic and saying like, you don't have any money. And so if you're going to do this, you have to succeed or else you don't have, And so they were rooting for them, but it was exactly what it was. It was them against the situation.
Yeah. That's why The Office is at its best when it's not relying on, Ryan's the bad guy for this season, or Robert California or Nellie or Andy for some reason. Like it's at its best when it's just like them fighting their inner struggles of Michael fighting his really crappy side that he doesn't quite know how to contain.
Yeah.
So.
Especially with this side note here, it was really annoying when that's in season 4 of The Office, which maybe I should save this for next week. You know what? I'm going to save that for next week because that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, we're 1 week away from season 4. So Well, since Leslie Knope was my number one, we talked about her a lot, so I knew we weren't going to take too long on this. She is my number one, but someone that would absolutely deserve to be on a top 3 list, maybe just right below it, would be Claire Huxtable from The Cosby Show.
Oh, yes.
She's a fantastic. We talked about her for Best Moms, and it's all the things that make her a great mom is also what makes her a strong, independent woman. She's that type that is not going to be pushed around. She's not going to be diminished by anyone. That to me is like the biggest sign of a strong person, period. Not just a woman, but any strong person, is to say that your insecurity or your anger or your projection of something onto me, I will not allow any of that to make me smaller. And Claire Huxtable is like the definition of that. But yet at the same time, she is really good at caring for her family. She's really good at caring for her husband. She's not like, I have to make my husband or my kids smaller so that I can be big. She walks into a room, demands that respect. And she also is very eager to give that respect back to you, because that's just how she treats people, unless you give her a reason not to give you respect.
It's been a while since I've watched The Cosby Show, because it's hard to watch it now.
But it's so unfortunate. Every time we bring it up, I'm like, come on. I wish there was a way to watch it without getting
But it
Cosby
was such
any
a
money.
good show.
It was.
One of the best Claire Huxtable scenes that I remember is the whole thing where Theo and Cockroach came home from the school field trip, and they were all upset, and the coach was unfair. We were stopping at this burger place and we didn't even get our burgers, and blah blah. And like, she could tell that there wasn't the whole story, so she basically sat it down and like had a mock courtroom and was like interrogating them as an attorney. And eventually it came out, because she was saying like, well, you said you didn't even get burgers, but you also said you were the first one off the bus to rush to get the line. So how is it that you didn't get the burgers? And then later on, what came down to, she got it out of them that they were making fun of an overweight woman who was eating burgers, I think is what it was. And then the coach pulled them out of line to, get after them about that and about being rude and disrespectful. And that's why, even though they were the first ones off the bus, they were at the end and kind of taught them that lesson. And it's like, she could, a lot of parents would have just been like, oh, okay, whatever. But she knew, like, no, there's something to this. And I'm going to teach them a lesson by like showing my skills, and I'm going to get this out of them.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's great. Cause like you could easily, this is, I think, a flaw too, sometimes that we view like our friends, that they need to immediately be like, oh, this happened to you, I'm so sorry. And so, like, but there are two sides of stories. And so as a mom, for her to know that and to be like, see it from this other point of view, you actually were in the wrong. And to, not belittle them after that too. It's like, just be like, it's okay. Sometimes you're in the wrong and you have a lesson you need to learn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And a lot of times some of the stuff just comes down to, misunderstandings and looking into the deeper meanings behind it.
Yep. Absolutely. Man, what a good character.
Yeah. And she's also good, but not as good when she made her guest appearances as Beth's mom and This Is Us, because there were definitely times when she was overly critical. Yeah. It's like, really? Do you have to be? But she still it was like she was Claire Huxtable in those scenes.
Yeah, she definitely, they leaned into her strength, like the poise. I'm sorry, that's what I'm looking for. They leaned into her poise without leaning into the empathy she also was able to give as Claire.
Mm-hmm.
And you got a little bit, you saw some empathy with her as Beth's mom, but it definitely was not in that same level, because it needed to be, you had to empathize with Beth more than empathizing with the mom. So you had to see the harshness that Beth saw. Yeah. And so I get it, but.
Well, I just saw one where like Beth was cooking and her mom's like, well, don't put too many peppers in because not everybody can handle the heat. And then at dinner, she's like, well, this could have used some more peppers. I'm like, what the?
That's not fair.
That's intentional at that point.
Yes, absolutely. Oh man, that drives me nuts. Those people who do that. And that's an example of a woman making someone else small. Like Marie from Everybody Loves Raymond. She is not a strong character because she makes people small. She manipulates.
Yes.
She's a good character. She's fun to watch, and Doris Roberts plays her so well. But no, she is emotionally weak to have that type of control on that family.
Yeah. And they give Marie some redemptive moments throughout the series, but overall, she's the overbearing mother. Yeah, so my last honorable mention is going to be Robin from How I Met Your Mother.
I had a feeling you were going to bring her up, and I'm like, I don't
Okay,
like it. I don't like it.
is that because of how they ended it?
Well, that too, but I never liked her as a character because the same issues I had with
Lorelai?
Lorelai, maybe not the same ones, but they're similar. She has a lot of unlikable things about her.
At times,
That
yes,
she's rather self-centered.
it kind of becomes. It's like there are times in the series where she's likable and times when she's not. So it kind of averages out a little bit. But there are times in the series where she is like, you know what, like I don't need somebody in my life. I can do my own thing. I'm going to chase my own career. And yeah, there are times when she's overly harsh, and then other times when she's like, "Oh, I need to date Ted or Barney." But it's like, other than that, or date her therapist, which was a weird storyline. But
Yeah. Bad use of Al Penn.
yes, I will say that. But overall, I think she is that archetype of the strong female character, which I think they should have just left her single at the end. I think she's the one who could have thrived in as being single.
She just never should have married Barney. They wrote themselves into a corner. They wrote themselves into a corner early on. I feel like if they were going to play that much with future stuff, like This Is Us did it way better because
Yes.
This Us is like, we're going to start like toying with this future stuff. Lost also even did it pretty well. I know some people hate the Lost season finale. I'm sorry, but they did like the future stuff better than How I Met Your Mother, because I think that both of those shows storyboarded where exactly they wanted to go. That they're like, okay, we're going to start getting to this spot. We need to have a lot of stuff in place. Whereas they had like the broad stroke. They knew it was going to be a Barney and Robin wedding, but I don't think they realized how. I don't think they thought much past that of how they're going to do that.
Yeah. Well, and This Is Us, they did it well because they knew early on the beats of the future. They're really the only big curveball that gave us about the future was Kate and Toby getting divorced. But you can tell early on that they planted the seeds of that throughout the second, third, fourth seasons with that. And then, but going back to Robin, I think it was fine when she dated Barney the first time, when it was like part of one season, then they broke up. Because I think they tried it out, it didn't work. And then I think they should have stayed broken up. And then because when Barney all of a sudden was like, "No, I need to date Robin again," it's like that came out of nowhere. Like, what? And I don't know. It just Ted was the one that was always pining for her, but Barney wasn't.
We needed a new character added to the group that could have served the function Robin served for Barney. Because this is another thing that makes her not as strong as a character to me, is that her relationship with Barney, I felt like, was more about developing Barney's arc than it was developing her arc. She didn't have a huge change to that arc, but Barney did. And so I think we should have gotten a different character that could have been that arc for Barney and allowed Robin a little bit more time of doing whatever she wanted, doing something else.
Some new character like Nora.
Yeah, Nora was a good character.
Yeah, I think they should have kept her.
Yes.
Because initially, Barney, if I'm remembering this right, Barney broke up with Nora to try to get after Robin.
Yeah. Because Robin was with Kal Penn and Barney was with Nora, and then they both decided that they were going to break up and then go with the other. And someone didn't. I can't remember who it was that didn't break up. I think it was Robin didn't break with Kal Penn when he broke up with Nora.
Yeah, they broke up later.
Yeah.
When a show like
I don't call him by his character's name. I know Nora, but Kal Penn.
I want to say Kevin, but that could be wrong.
That actually sounds right, but who knows?
Thing is, with what you said earlier, when you're playing with a show with time, like This Is Us did it, where they're jumping around time all the time, so they had to know like what are the beats of this thing, and they did that really well on that show. On How I Met Your Mother, if you're doing that so much and you're narrating it from the future, I think they have to at least get together in a writer's room and say like, okay, what is the end game? Is Robin supposed to be with Barney, or is she supposed to be with Ted, or is she supposed to be with nobody? And then continually write to that end from the beginning. If they had written any one of those from the beginning and had that be a cohesive storyline, any one of those could have worked. But they jump around so much because they're trying to keep us guessing, which is like, what's better, telling a good story or telling a surprising story?
Exactly. Yeah, you're absolutely right, is that they were trying to do a twist. And that you don't do twists just for twists. That's what sunk M. Night Shyamalan's career.
Is he still doing stuff?
He is. What did he have most recently? I think Split still might be his most recent movie. I thought maybe there was another one after that, but I can't remember what it was.
Because he had, Sixth Sense and Signs and The Village are his three biggest ones, right?
He had a show on Apple Plus. That was the most recent thing that he did. I can't remember what it is.
Okay.
But I didn't watch it, so in your face, M. Night.
Yeah.
Or as we like to call you here, that's his name.
That's the joke they did on Scrubs. They said, "Oh, his name is Ma."
Oh, I didn't remember it.
Janitor said that. He's like, "Yeah, just like my other friend, Murray Abraham."
That's a good janitor joke. All right, so here I got one other character to mention for an honorable mention, one that I know you haven't seen.
Okay.
Mike, if you're listening, you're gonna be a fan because it is the only female captain of a starship from Starship. I can't say that anymore because there's a lot of new Star Trek stuff like they have this Star Trek renaissance. Like we're gonna do like not just one show, but like 9 new shows on CBS. So Michelle Yeoh is like one of the captains in Star Trek Discovery. But I'm talking about Star Trek Voyager, Captain Janeway. She was the first female captain that we saw in the Star Trek universe. She was a similar archetype of Picard. I mean, of course she's going to be because she is a captain of a starship, and so you need that type of character. But she was more Picard, less Kirk, because she wasn't as involved. Like Kirk would be like in the physical altercations on the planets that they'd go to. And she wasn't as much, but she was always willing to be there. But she also understood the needs of a starship. She understood the needs of her crew. She was very good at having the whole well-being of the crew be her number one focus. But at the same time, she's in this circumstance because for those of you who don't know what the Star Trek Voyager was about, it wasn't just like Star Trek Enterprise or Star Trek Next Generation or the original series where it's like they're just exploring planets and it's episodic. This one was episodic, but it was this overall theme where they get thrown across the universe through this device in the pilot episode, and they're thousands of light years from home. And so it's like it would take, at their maximum warp capabilities, it would take over 100 years to get back to home. And so the whole idea is trying to find ways that they can speed that up, finding shortcuts, finding different things as they're traveling back from the Delta Quadrant to home. And so, usually these starships, they have like a couple of years at max as their crew mission. And so it's like to know that this is going to be possibly the first generational starship in the fleet, like there is a lot of new things that they're in this new territory. And so she does such a good job of leading this ship. And even in the first season, they have some of their characters are from this other ship that they assimilate more over into their crew. And so working with these transplants, so to speak, on this ship and like helping to merge that culture together and create a space for them on this ship. So she does such a great job of being able to balance all of her responsibilities, but then you also see some softer sides and tender sides to her that show you, yeah, she's a real person. She's not just some robot. So she does such a great job of leading while also having the tenderness that you might want. Like she likes these like novels where she's like this housemaid in Victorian England type, or like a tutor for these children, and like that's what she does in her spare time on the holodeck. So stuff like that.
It sounds like an interesting character. Like I haven't seen any Star Trek. It's one of my biggest TV blind spots. But yeah, you're kind of making me want to go watch. But the thing with Star Trek is such a juggernaut. Like, where would I even start? So I don't even. Yeah, sorry, but yeah, I mean, so this.
I think Next Generation. Some people might hate this, but in my opinion, I feel like Next Generation, after the first season, because the first season has a lot of cheesiness, but the Star Trek Next Generation, starting in the second season, really has the combination of like thought-provoking television while also not being too cheesy. Because I feel like the original series is going to have a lot more cheesiness, and you'll be like, that's just a different brand. Whereas this was like first of the modern era of what we know and love about Star Trek. That's my opinion.
What was the character's name again? Jane something?
Captain Janeway. Yeah.
Janeway. Okay.
Catherine.
Catherine Janeway. Okay. I think you said Captain.
Yes. It is. I mean, it is. It's Captain Catherine
Captain
Janeway.
Catherine Janeway. Seems a little confusing.
Well, I mean, they very rarely call her Catherine because she's the captain. She gets that respect.
Yeah. If we ever do a Star Trek episode, we're going to have to bring a guest on because otherwise I'm going to have nothing to say.
Yeah, I feel like you would just be like asked to leave. Or you're just sitting there like, yeah, that's a good thing that they did there with that story.
Well, I already know exactly what I would do when we do a Star Trek episode. And I want to do it just so I can do that.
That's fair. All right. Did you think of any trivia?
I do have trivia, but let's talk about last week's trivia first. So with voice actors, I talked about two actors from Family Guy, Seth MacFarlane and Alex Borstein. I said, what show did both of them appear separately in live action cameos as well as voice cameos in the same show? And that was Gilmore Girls.
Ta-da!
Seth MacFarlane appeared as one of Lorelai's graduating classmates, and Alex Borstein had two recurring roles, but once as her mother's dresser, or what do you call it, her wardrobe lady, and then also as a harp player. And then Seth MacFarlane also was on the phone as a lawyer in a voicemail, and then they were both on together doing voice cameos when Lorelai and Rory are watching school production. They're both singing Michael Roll Your Boat Ashore.
Seth MacFarlane also was graduating with Lorelai as well.
I said that.
Did you? Never mind. Well, whatever. I don't listen to you.
It's like the first thing I said.
As you're talking, I'm just like, well, I'll just wait till he's done, then I can say my stuff.
And the reason for that is that Dan Palladino, who is Amy Sherman Palladino's husband and one of the producers of Gilmore Girls, worked on Family Guy, and so those guys were all friends, and so they would go on each other's shows a bunch.
She also works on a show I've been watching that I like, The Marvelous Miss Maisel, and that also has Alex Borstein, but she's in she's probably second billing in the show, I would imagine.
Yeah. Her three main shows are Gilmore Girls and Bunheads, which I haven't seen, and The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and I believe there are a lot of crossover actors. She likes to use the same people a lot in her shows.
I believe it.
But this
Marvelous Miss Maisel is really good. I would say check it out.
Yeah, I will. So this week, all three of my picks, which are Lorelai from Gilmore Girls, Leslie from Parks and Rec, and Roseanne from Roseanne, have a significant other or ex-significant other who appeared on their shows. So who are their significant other / ex-significant others who appeared on their shows?
I've got two. What was your second one?
Leslie?
No, the other one.
Roseanne.
Roseanne. No, the other one.
Oh. Lorelai.
Lorelai. Oh, I don't know if I know hers. Yeah, I know the other two. I don't think I know hers.
Okay. If you do, let us know. No one's answered our trivias in a long time.
That's true. I mean, everyone's just jumping at the bits to answer them, and when they do answer them, we give them hundreds of dollars in cash. We send it to them through Venmo. So, you should ask. You should tell us your answers to trivia.
If we don't send you money, you weren't the first one.
That's it. Yep. See, we know. All right. Hey, yeah. Again, check out. We've done a lot of good episodes recently. Talked about voice actors, very important actors. We talked about The Office seasons 1 through 3. That was a great episode. We talked about Breaking Bad for the first time a couple weeks ago. So check that out as well. Next week will be another fantastic episode, and we're joined by 3 other people. So 5 of us in one super packed episode. It's going to be great. Make sure you're here for it. Until next time, I'm Matt.
I'm Brian.
And we're reminding you to stay tuned and keep watching.